Broker Bulletin acknowledges the traditional custodians of all the lands across the country on which we record our podcast and pays its respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Welcome to the Broker Bulletin podcast, where better begins. Join us as we chat with brokers about what's working for them, what drives them, and the real challenges and wins that matter most right now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of Broker Bulletin. Today we are recording live at day 2 of the LMG Growth Summit here in Melbourne. It's really exciting to be surrounded by brokers who are in growth mode, and one of our today's guests is doing exactly that. Rob Flynn is the founder of Forteal Financial Group, in which he's been working since 2019. Rob, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Simon.
My pleasure, mate. You started in 2019. What's changed in broking since then?
Yeah, I think the one constant all brokers can agree on is that change is constant. I had the benefit of 5 years in another brokerage before I started Vorteal, so I had a bit of context of, what happened from 2014 to 2019. Obviously, then starting a business in 2019, sandwiched by the Royal Commission having just finalised, and then COVID starting shortly after. I decided to go to Europe for 2 months in between as well. So lots of stuff going on. I think obviously, rates have gone up and down. Regulation has changed. We've been poked and prodded and stretched and pulled. But ultimately the thing that's remained the same is this core idea of if you provide value to your clients, then everything else really works out. And I think the changes, you just adapt and you overcome. As long as you keep doing a good job, the rest of it, in my opinion, is just noise. You just build systems to deal with it and just keep the client centric to everything that you do. Everything else will sort itself out.
So focus on the core, keep that focus there, work it relentlessly.
100%. Big thing for me was just find out what your value proposition is and what your values are. Mm-hmm. And as long as you stay true to that, that's kind of your compass. And so sort of we have our mantra that we've built everything around is this idea of empowering you to make informed decisions. And that applies to clients, staff, interns, and then the mechanics of it. That's the bit that changes, but we just tweak that over time. Yeah.
So when you think about, I guess, that evolution and how you've adapted since 2019, what is it you've done to stay ahead of the pack, so to speak? So rather than, being dragged along, so to speak, what have you looked at to stay a step ahead potentially? Yeah,
I think I started by myself. It was me, myself, and I. One thing I did quite early, probably earlier than most people, is I got an office, and that was a deliberate shift. I registered the name of Financial Group to sort of signal intention that this was not going to remain a one-person shop that only dealt with one problem, which is no issue if that's the business that someone's running, but that was not the vision I had. So it was always thinking about not just what's tomorrow or next week, but what am I doing next year and what am I doing in 5 years? Probably the biggest catalyst for me, as you know, was bringing Kat, my wife, into the business. That was something we sort of started off as, oh, hey, I need some help. Can we make this work? Very quickly recognised that she was a lot better at a lot of the business ops and sort of the running of a business than I am. So I think the thing I did best was get her in. The thing I needed to have done better, given another opportunity, would be to have let go of more control a lot earlier. I think a lot of us start a business because we don't want a boss. And so then relinquishing some of that control and recognising what her strengths were and then actually allowing her to step into that has worked well, but could have been done a lot better on my part. There was a lot of things I was kicking and screaming about, to be honest.
But I think a lot of that's hindsight as well, isn't it, Rob? So in my time in broking, that's what I love about you and Kat with the Forteal Financial Group, is there's a yin and yang. So where I see is where it really works well is where both of the key drivers have very different strengths, which obviously you and Kat do, but you play beautifully those strengths and you understand what those strengths are. So that's, I think, what's helped to take you forward. Where I see businesses struggle is where they have two key drivers of the business who are too similar, because then they can either get too bogged down or they leave a trail of destruction behind them. But that's what I like about you guys, is that growth and that yin and yang, that complement. each other.
Definitely. And that's not to say we don't have a strong amount of overlap, and there are some skills that both of us have, and there are areas of the job that we actually both really like to do. And so that's sort of where we play together. But a lot of that is around the actual lending aspect of things. So if you were ever going to have two heads working on one problem, I think actually focusing on the lending probably helps.
Yeah.
Like I said, just get out of your own way sometimes is probably the biggest tip I could give to any new or established broker.
Yeah. So that almost answers the question I was going to ask you next, is if you were to look back on year one, what would you do differently, and what would that look like as far as a business? So you've almost answered that as part of that last question, is maybe do that sooner. Is there anything else apart from that?
100%. So I would have brought Kat in even earlier, would have grown her role quicker to let her do that, and then possibly even looked at then what was the next step, because I needed someone to do my pricing and order my valuations and everything else, and that was what I brought her in for, and then she ended up doing all this other stuff. Should have then brought kind of her, an assistant, in much sooner. But the other thing that I've thought about over my career really is something I should have done a lot earlier, despite aggregators and everyone else encouraging me to do it for years and years and years, is diversify the service offering. Once you've sort of mastered one skill, whether that's you that does that or you find a way for your business to do that, that's been huge for us. And I kind of look back and I go, I cannot believe I did not write an SMSF loan until 2022 or something like that, because it was one of the easiest loans I've ever done.
So the first 3 years was effectively doing what you knew around the resi, but then, so what was the catalyst for, obviously you knew it was there, but what was the catalyst to actually jump in and do that first SMSF in 2022?
I have to give credit to Kat for most things that have happened well. So we just sort of looked at, obviously WA's running on a very different market cycle to a lot of the rest of the country. So the start of my career was in a downward turning market. You had a loan that you wrote at 90% one year, you did the review, 2 years later, they've paid off 50K and their LVR was now 104.
Yeah, crazy.
And so you always had to look at what else can we do? And so it was just, how do we sort of recession and business cycle proof the business more? We were very refi heavy, which when there's no equity in anyone's properties makes it really difficult. I started my career doing a lot of construction finance, and so you're really tied to these particular markets. So kind of by diversifying the resi side across different businesses and different sort of cycles, but then also going, okay, if we get into commercial, if we get into asset, those operate on different cycles again, there's different opportunities. So that's been huge for us. And if I had gotten into that earlier, the main thing it did was just open up more doors. It's more opportunities to have more conversations with clients. You can solve
100%.
more problems. We found we already had a very self-employed heavy book. So they have more, there's more value you can add to that client. But then also with referrers, all of a sudden my accountant, who's been my accountant for years, once I started saying I do commercial stuff, I get way more referrals from him now. And 9 times out of 10, you pick up a client for their commercial lending, you end up doing all of their resi stuff anyway. And a lot of small business issues can be resolved with residential lending anyway, because they're feeling squeezed on cash flow. I'm not going to tell people how to suck eggs. There's just a lot you can do. So that was huge for us.
So that catalyst potentially around, you're doing a lot of refis, because obviously I remember at that stage, refis were massive, but then they weren't. So did you see that about to drop off, or the wave was going to crash at some stage? So you maybe got in a bit ahead of that, and you're interested in the SMSF commercial. So was that the trigger, or did you see potentially the wave breaking and that's why you jumped in?
It was a little bit of everything, really. So no one particular answer to that, but something that I had sort of thought when I started out, because I started broking at 21, so I knew everything already, of course.
Of course.
Bulletproof. Was I just thought, well, if you just pick up 100 clients, and then you just rewrite those loans every time. I can't believe all these people don't service their back book. Like, why is everyone chasing new business? You've got all these clients there. And all I didn't realize is while my numbers were growing in settlements, my book actually had barely grown for about 2 years. And obviously when you start out, you can do 70% growth, 80% growth, and you can keep doubling your business every couple of years, but your book's not growing anywhere. And that was kind of all of the value. So I think I was just marginally ignorant to that fact for a little while. So then that was just a bit of a deliberate shift to go, okay, well, we need to still service the back book, but we actually have to be bringing in new clients as well. Otherwise, we're just going to stay at whatever we had at the time, 150, 200 clients. What's
been the toughest period since starting out, and what did it teach you? Was it the interest rates? Was it the turn off?
That's tricky. I mean, there's been a lot of challenges, but a lot of it, like I said before, I just put that down to noise. Like, it's just like interest rate, something I say all the time, and cliches exist for a reason, right? Like, control the controllable. It's something we say in our office all the time. We talk to clients about it. You can't control the market. You can't control interest rates. You can't control what banks are going to do. You can anticipate and you can put measures in place. But I don't get stressed out about rates. I have always spoken to clients about their home loans at significantly sensitized rates. We've always sort of forward planned for stuff. So at the times when rates have gone up, everyone's going, oh my God, you must be getting inundated with phone calls. Most of the time I don't get contacted by a client at all because we're usually on the front foot in the first place. But when rates have gone up, they're like, oh, well, that's okay because you told us to budget for everything at 6.5%, 7% when the rates were 4%. So we're fine. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. I guess part of that as well, if we think about what was learnt along the way, compliance, for example. So you think about 2019 and what compliance was like then to what it is now. It's changed significantly. Has that been a hindrance or a benefit for the business and how you put it to your clients or dealt with it internally and explained it to your clients?
I've been quite lucky in that I've always had good people and kind of good advice around me, whether that's on an aggregator level or industry contacts. And, I've bounced around a bit. But I always viewed, all this best interest duty stuff came out and it was stressful at the time. But then I sort of read through the legislation when it came out and I went, well, this is just good business operation. And actually, I feel like most people are already doing this. This is just putting a framework in place to document that. Yeah. So that then just got used as a competitive advantage. And I think the industry did a pretty good job of harnessing that and saying, well, this is actually not a hindrance at all. You can now come out and say, I am legally required to act in your best interests. And this long list of alternatives that you can go to are actually not. They are exempted from it. And people went, oh, well, then why would anyone? I said, that's my question. So I don't think that was ever an issue. I would say, to be honest with you, the biggest barrier that we've had over the last few years has not been any of the compliance stuff. Again, that's just noise. It's just been finding the right people to take on the journey with us. That's been our biggest challenge. Was sort of getting Kat in was amazing, and that worked really well. And I recognise that won't work for everyone, but then finding that next right person and the one after that was where we had a lot of challenges. And I think a lot of businesses do, not just brokers. Speak to clients all the time, and people, again, cliche. It's like, oh, good help's hard to find. It is, actually. But you find someone with a good attitude, and that's where, probably touching on a follow-up question from you in anticipation, is that's where our internship program is huge. It's like, how do you find good people? They're out there, diamonds in the rough. So again, that was another CAT initiative was, we had this one intern. So what if we turn this into something? So now we host 5 to 10 interns a year, and that's not a deliberate hiring mechanism. That's just kind of something we're very passionate about is the future of the industry.
Absolutely.
But we've now found 3 staff out of doing that. Find the good ones, and attitude is one thing you can't train, I think. So we hire on attitude. You can generally teach skills. And then if that doesn't work, that's what probation periods are for.
And I love what you're doing with the interns as well, and 100%, because they're the future of our broking, as you and Kat are as well. Did you get to the interns because of some hiring lessons or what happened in the past with people you'd brought on? Was that part of the evolution? Because you didn't just jump straight in and go, oh, we're just going to take on some interns. Can you maybe walk me through how you got to that?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. Our first ever intern was a guy I played soccer with, and he was just a young guy, had a real sort of go-getter attitude, and then he sort of approached me, and I was willing to give him a bit of a crack. And then it kind of came out of that. He was still studying, and there was this option that they could skip a unit in their last semester if they interned with us. And we kind of went, oh, that's really interesting, because then there's a bit of two-way value. For us, we get, someone in that we can have a look at. For them, they get to skip a whole unit at uni. And then the industry benefits because more people are getting an educated look at the industry. We're getting people who are degree qualified looking at the industry. But for me, I've chalked it up again, coming back to that empowering you to make informed decisions. We've had people enter the industry as a result of the internship that never intended on getting into broking, that are going to quite likely be very good operators. And we've had people that have approached us for an internship going, I want to be a broker.
Because they've heard of what you've been doing?
Yeah. So we've had some sort of privately approach us as well, or referral from client. Oh, hey, I've got this nephew, blah, blah, blah. And they come in and they've gone, this is not at all what I thought it was. and have used that then as, their education moment of, oh, this isn't the job I thought it was.
Yeah.
And have then chosen not to join the industry. And I think that's just as important.
Yes.
That there's more of a light shone on what is the role actually. Because I think some people just see, the glossy brochure and they say, oh, work your own hours and uncapped earning potential. And it's like, that's not untrue. But the realities of the job are not often marketed until after someone's already quit their job and paid for a diploma and gone all in on something, and then unfortunately found out 6 to 12 months later that, it's not going to work.
What I love about that as well is because there's no university course about mortgage broking. So you've got this break by the guy you played soccer with. So the interns you've had come in, what are they studying? What's their degree that they're doing that then, because I'm assuming it's something to do with accounting or marketing or something business potentially?
So the university we've partnered with is conveniently about 2 k's down the road from our office. It's on the same street. So that's very easy. And so we sort of, off the back of that first intern, forge that relationship with them. And then they send us anyone who's like a Bachelor of Commerce or Master of Commerce majoring in finance. And most people will do 2 majors and they're not too worried about what the second major is, but it's usually sort of economics because it's sort of interested in markets and how things operate, and then finance. And so most of them have been finance econs, but there's been a bit of finance accounting. We've had some real academics, double law degree with a, bachelor's in finance, and they're kind of going, well, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to pursue the law side or the finance side, or I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do more analytics or more accounting. And so they come to us for a bit of what do I think of this? But generally finance. But more recently, 2 of our recent interns were actually postgraduate students. So we're getting master's level students coming through, and that's been really, really interesting. And probably to answer a bit more of your previous question, actually, now that I think of it, is one of the biggest things we did and lessons we learned out of the whole hiring thing and how we applied that to interns was hire on attitude, I guess, is what I sort of talked about before, because you can't train that. So it's just getting the right people in, and generally someone who's wanting to do an internship. I mean, they're not getting paid. So, they're coming in because they want to be there.
Is it a 12-week internship?
120 hours is how much they have to do. So how long that takes them is often up to their schedule. So we try to get them in for sort of 2 to 3 partial days per week and get that over a 6 to 12-week program. So we've got that fairly well structured, and we leverage things like Brokerversity alongside practical tools, and they shadow and whatever else. One of the biggest changes we made was we sort of went, it's very overwhelming. It's a lot of time for us, so we'll just do one at a time. Then MK actually gave us a tip to say, when you hire 2 people. And so we went, well, we just take on 2 interns next time. Oh my God, so much easier, because then all of those silly questions, they just ask each other and they grow together and they make good relationships.
Gotcha.
They don't even realise they've learned how to network while they were there too. So I get to kind of tick one more box. Look what I showed you how to do.
Given there's now a bit of a momentum there, you'd want to be careful about how many you bring on. So, and given your name, the Vorteil name's out there now as well, and you're being approached and you're on the campus, if you like, the university, do you intend to take, say, 2 on every 6 months, or you do the 120 hours, see what happens with those ones, then do you do back to back, or do you wait a bit of time? And then you must have some sort of screening process in place there, because if you're going to start getting more people, you can only take on 2 at a time. And do you increase it from 2 to 3 to 4, or do you stick it at 2?
Yeah, look, it's unfortunate. I can't hire them all, and we don't aspire to have a business of 50 people. I don't want to have a whole heap of headaches to have to deal with. So we're probably capped out at the moment on hiring, because we've just hired the last 2 interns. There's 3 intakes a year. So there's summer school, semester 1, semester 2. Okay. So typically we just take 2 at each of those, and then sporadically there may be some others ad hoc in between.
Gotcha.
But generally, 6 interns a year is not too hard at 3 stages throughout the year. So that's not too bad. In terms of when the next one comes on, from a hiring perspective or not, really depends on how the current 2 that we've just hired go. But our goal is to progress staff internally, up the chain. So you'll start off learning the basic admin, and as we show you the ropes, see where your career takes you. Not everyone wants to be a broker. Some people will forge a fantastic career for themselves as a credit analyst, or they'll have a lifelong career in post-settlement care and they love that side of things, or para-broking. So we just see where that lands. But our idea is that out of those people, we will grow some brokers. And then our challenge then is, well, if we move you out of this role into this role, we need to replace that from the bottom. So that's where it will come in. But it's a bit of a project for me is to work out how can I scale that internship side of things. I don't want us to be the only brokers in Australia hosting interns. We're currently the only ones in WA that are hosting finance interns at all.
So you give it a big thumbs up for interns at this stage, or everyone's got to go on their own journey around that?
You've got to figure out what works for you, but I think it can work really, really well. And that's not to say that we didn't have, headaches with them. We had headaches with staff too, but the universities that operate in that internship programs are very committed to making sure it's a good experience for everyone.
Yep.
So when we've had ones that haven't been working out for whatever reason, they've been very quick to resolve those issues for us.
So they're keen to help out the interns as much as possible. They've got a vested interest there.
100%. You talked about the screening. I mean, they pre-screen. The interns they send us are amazing.
Wow.
Okay. So generally they're sending me a short list to go through. We still interview them as if it is for a job, but there's been very little that we've turned away. Often we've had to kind of sift through and be like, which of these are we going to pick? Because, they've got amazing grades and this experience, and they seem to only send us the cream of the crop. So it's not a lot of time commitment from that perspective, because they're already sending you good, because that's their reputation on the line as a university as well. They don't want you sitting there going, geez, this university's got a bunch of dud students. They only want to showcase their best.
Awesome. In this market, growth doesn't come by accident. So what's driving your growth aspirations right now for, say, the next 12 months? What does that look like for you?
I think that ties into what I was talking about previously. So, we've deliberately sort of diversified the business. Our levers that we've pulled recently have been around the hiring piece. So we recognise that I can do a bit more than what I'm doing, and we run quite a lean business model. Like I said, I'm not interested in having 10 or 15 staff. CAT is very systemised and organised.
Yes,
we've got a lot of stuff automated, and AI has been huge for us in time savings and saving my brain space, which is very limited at the best of times.
That's where CAT comes in.
That's where CAT comes in. We've just hired 2 of our summer interns. Jake, who we hired sort of 12, 13 months ago, is progressing into the broking space. And
he's here at the Growth Summit at the minute. Seems to be enjoying it from what he tells me.
Yeah. So our shift really is just getting that staff mix right. I don't know really beyond that I need a lot more staff in the short to medium term. So the focus then is just controlled and sustainable growth. Keep that book growing, keep the clients happy. We've had a lot of opportunity in back book side of things. So one of the interns we hired is solely looking after back book now.
Yeah.
And just getting that mix right so that we can then take the next step probably in another 12 months.
So helping with that growth, a lot of it is around systems and processes. So what systems have made the biggest difference to Vorteil's in that time, and what's going to help you scale for 12 months, 24 months, 36 after that? What do you see? Because I know you talked about AI. Obviously, CAT is really strong in that systems and process and implementation area. So how do you see the challenges there, and what are you doing to stay ahead?
Yeah, I think it's careful and measured. So it's a bit of a balance. We don't just jump into stuff. We sort of really like to vet things. I do have concerns around privacy and InfoSec and that kind of thing. But AI has been massive. I was, I guess, relatively speaking, an early adopter of using AI. But
100%.
I think in quite a basic way, to be honest. So it's just not trying to solve problems that don't exist. I think there's no one system that works better than others. It's just what is going to seem in the simplest in what you're already doing. You don't want to try and reinvent the wheel. So you've got your process, tweak that, refine it over time, but just what's going to complement that? Where's a pain point, and how are you going to make that easier? So if that's around emails, so we've streamlined a lot of stuff. So I think, like I said before, it's just getting the people in to remove a little bit of admin load. I'm probably still holding on to too much. I think most brokers probably are. And so get some of that out, stop being such a control freak, let a bit more stuff go. But for us, it's always been quantity cannot come at a compromise of quality.
That's so important, isn't it?
I've got a very clear idea of the kind of business that we want to run and the service that we want to offer. It's quite high touch. I could scale back on that, and we could save a lot more time by being a lot lighter on, but I don't want to do that. So I'm never going to be the broker that writes 500 loans in a year. That's just not the model that we're building. So, while we want to keep that service quite deep, that is just then something we have to be conscious of.
Yeah, which I suppose is where diversification comes in as well, because you can have a relatively smaller client base, but you do everything for them. Instead of a massive client base where you're just doing perhaps one vertical, there's the other revenue sources and helping them out there as well.
And don't get me wrong, like that's not to say, I want to have a small business and I don't want to write, a lot of loans. We do okay. I think there's a bit of a conception sometimes over in WA and all of those little businesses and stuff. And so no, it's not the reality, but it's just staying true, like I said at the beginning, staying true to your values and what's the service offering that you want to provide. And there's no right or wrong answers to those. But for us, that is what it is. We really want to hold that trusted advisor role. So I love it when clients call me and they're like, I don't really think this is your thing, but we didn't really know who else to call and we trust you. And I love that. And I get those all the time, it's like, well, here's what we're thinking. And it's like, no, you're right. I'm not even legally allowed to answer that question, but I love that you've come to me and here's the kind of person you should speak to. Do you have an accountant that you trust, or do you have this? So then for us, a lot of our scale comes from having really good connections and then just being the conduit to the problem solver. So I don't particularly market myself to clients as the guy they come to for loans. I want to be the guy they come to with problems. Brilliant. And then we solve them. Brilliant. And if finance is a mechanism that we use to solve your problems, then so be it. But a lot of the time people just need a little bit of structural change or just put some guardrails up and then they're comfortable to proceed.
So look, talking about clients, how have clients' expectations changed in the last few years as well? And do you deal with a certain demographic of clients? Is it wide-ranging? Is the expectations the same across the board? Can you share some of that with us there, Rob?
Yeah, I don't know so much that I have a particular client niche. Being younger and then like attracts like, and most of our business comes from our existing clients. So I used to put a lot of focus on referrers, and don't get me wrong, we get about a quarter of our business comes through referrers, but more of it actually comes from the existing client base. And so you're just getting more of the same. So it's sort of 25 to 35-year-old, families. It's just mum and dad type sort of business. So when I'm doing commercial deals, it's not, I'm not funding an airport construction. It's generally just, they run a plumbing business and they're looking to take over the property that they've been leasing for the last 5 years, want to buy that. It's really just been leveraging into that and leaning into those. So we put a lot more emphasis on providing a lot of service to the existing clients to stay top of their mind. Doing 6 monthly reviews was a shift we made recently. And even if you're getting no result for them, still calling them just so they know, they've, Vorteal have had a look at my loan, and we're just calling them to say, hey, we gave you back, a bit of a nudge. It's the best rate you can be on. There are some small tweaks there. How's everything else going? And so often you'll call someone and they're like, it's so weird that you've called. Me and Josie were just talking about you yesterday. Where is she thinking of buying a new home? Or, work started doing novated leases. What are your thoughts on that? And if you don't do that call, maybe they would have called you next week. Maybe they wouldn't have.
Talking about that, was that change and that shift that you're doing there, was that as a result of clients' expectations that they were saying, or is this something that you and Kat said, hey, we want to be doing this, and this is what we want to have for our clients as we grow out there?
The client expectations piece, I think they do expect more now. Certainly the kind of clients that we're looking to attract, they're not looking for transactions to be done. It's very relationship based, I guess is the point I was trying to make. And so I think running a transactional business model, I think that's probably a limited scope moving forward, because frankly, with the advent of AI and how that is evolving, that will replace those sorts of transactions. I think what we know from the data presently is people don't trust AI enough for them to let it make those decisions.
The people.
They still want the people, but that will change, I believe. There's enough sci-fi movies out there about people falling in love with their AI assistant and whatever else. So I think we need to look at how can I leverage tech to make our job easier, but what's the value that you can add as a human being is the relationship, the trust, the advice on a level that I don't think tech will ever fully replace. So it's more for me about how do I leverage those tools to service more things for the clients? Because that's what they're looking for. Whether they know it or not, they're wanting more from you. If they just wanted the transaction done, most people could do that themselves, but they don't. We know that. The digital offerings are out there. People are not using them. But that shift may come if you're not layering on enough value.
So talking about, still on the growth perspective as well, so where are you investing right now for the next phase of growth? And we've talked about people, marketing, compliance, the interns, the systems, the processes. We also spoke this morning before coming in here about the guy who spoke Chris Kohler about at the top 250 lunch about the social media piece and doing the videos and the content. Is that potentially something that you and Kat are looking at? Is that the next phase of growth to get the brand out there a bit more along those lines, or is it a little bit of each of the other things as well?
It's a little bit of everything because one feeds the other, right? Like I need to bring on staff to free up time for me to do other things, but then I need to bring in more business to substantiate having the additional staff. So it is a multifaceted, although targeted approach. I think the shotgun approach doesn't work. So the big thing for us was let's get good people in. We've done that now. So continue to scale that. The huge opportunity for me my entire career has been around marketing. And that's not something to say that like Kat has just gone last week or hey, she's been on me for 5 or 6 years. Like this is a huge opportunity for us. And so I've been a bit of a sticking point. I've kind of always been the bottleneck in the business, if I'm really honest with myself. And a big part of that has been around marketing. I bought a mic 2 years ago for me to start recording podcasts, and this is now the first one I've recorded. This is not using my mic that I bought. So a lot of that stuff, and it's always been, oh yeah, you need to do video content, you need to do this. So I think that'll be the focus over the next little while. I've been looking at just a bit of a slight tweak, rebrand, just to refresh things. You know, it's been 7 years this year.
And I think that 6 to 7 years is a great opportunity for that brand refresh to go out to your client base. Hey, we're freshening up. This is what it looks like. It always drives that.
And they may not even notice the difference, you know, but I'll know, you know, oh, hey, we're doing something different. So it's just that mentality thing. So I think that's going to be the big thing for us is I currently do very, very little on socials. You know, we're really not leveraging much at all. So driving that a bit more, because what we've realized over the last few years since measuring a lot of the data is, like I said before, most of our business is coming from the existing database, either them coming back or referrals from them. Whereas for the first few years, I was putting all of my effort into referral partners and nothing into the client base. I think if we can leverage that, that gets more out of them because they're already engaged with the brand, and then maybe a few more people sort of find it. But I'm not expecting, you know, we get a little bit of stuff through Google, we've got a decent amount of reviews and that kind of thing, but it's nothing to blow your socks off. I don't think that's going to be the silver bullet.
So it's about bringing it all together is what you're saying then. So not just one thing, but bring it all together, and maybe that social presence as well. Because I think for the next phase of growth, getting the name out there a bit more, seeing more clients, getting a greater reach, and bringing them in, which will complement the existing clients that you've got there.
100%. Well. And just also that diversified broker piece. You know, I still even now will have a chat to a client, we'll do the review. And, you know, I said sometimes you time it perfectly and they go, oh my God, I was going to call you next week. Frustratingly, a lot of the time it's, oh, yeah, I just took out a car loan a month ago. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you did that. Okay, so clearly I'm not doing enough to get that that message out there. You think you are, but I mean, how many emails do you ignore or delete in a week? So I think getting on the phone has been the biggest impact we can have as the business has grown. You know, when you start out, you're friends with all your clients and it's great and you're hands-on and you're doing everything. And I loved my job in the beginning for that. I still love my job now, but has changed, and it's harder as you grow and you start having a couple of thousand people in the database and you've you know, settled 1,000 loans or whatever it is, and you just cannot physically have that same. So then you start automating stuff and moving away from doing those hands-on things, and it's so easy to lose that. Biggest shift we made in the last, probably only in the last 12 months, is me getting back on the phone. And that's every morning. There's an hour blocked out.
Love it.
Get on the phone. Just get on the phone to a client. So a lot of that's my repricing calls. But if it's, you know, there's not enough of those there, then it's who's the accountant you met with for coffee 2 times last year. Call them. call that client you haven't thought of, that builder you met at that networking meeting, you've had his business card sitting in your top drawer for 6 months, call him, just get on the phone, because we all get so many emails and we get so many text messages from every clothing store you've ever dared to set foot in. Having another sale, but no one's calling you. And then all of a sudden, that has created that big shift. Yeah.
It just reinforces, isn't it, Rob? There's no silver bullet. It's just get back to basics. It's the things that you did, like you said, when you first started the business. You talk to people, you press the flesh, you made connections with people. It gets too busy, and every business goes through the same cycle before they then get to that point. Holy cow, I need to be reconnecting there. But again, it's no silver bullet. It's the basics. Interact with people. They love talking to you as well. Last question before we wrap up there is, for brokers thinking about growth or going out on their own, what's the one bit of advice that you would give them?
My biggest piece of advice for any broker is make sure that you have the right support network in place. I think it can be a lonely business at the best of times, but it's a very supportive industry. Looking forward, I will say I think it's going to be more important than ever that brokers are in a position to be able to lean on each other and to potentially team up. So I think just make sure you've got the right support network there. You know, I'm very lucky to have a business partner that, you know, helps me to be my best and helps to drive the business in the right direction, keeps me more focused than I would on my own. But if you're out there and you're on your own, it can be really, really tricky, I think. And you know, the stats back that up. So I think just make sure whatever model you approach, you know, you've thought it up and you've got that safety net there, someone to lean on.
Yeah. Rob, thanks very much for being part of Broker Bulletin today. One of the things we always look for in Broker Bulletin is, what's that little 1% thing that you do every day to create that edge?
I'm going to go back to what I said just before and just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. It's the biggest thing that you can do. So easy to just fall back on the email, because it's much easier to send out 250 emails. I'd say it's much more impactful to make 25 phone calls.
Mate, I love that. I've loved everything you've talked about today. I love your journey. I believe in karma and all the good things that you're doing with these interns, because yes, that helps your business, but more importantly, from talking to you, not just today, but outside of here, I know you do it from a good place in your heart because you want to see the industry grow and you want to help people. And I firmly believe that people who help other people and are genuine about it, great things happen to them as well, mate. So thanks for today. Thanks for being open and honest and the raw discussion. It was great chatting to you today, and good luck with Forteal Financial Group going forward, and with Kat, who's outside looking in. So
awesome. Thanks, Simon. And again, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Look, that was a great conversation there with Rob. I think to wrap up, my biggest takeaway from today's conversation is, look, I love the karma piece. I love the fact that Rob's investing in interns, not only for his own business, but also to grow the industry. And that's part of, obviously, the learnings that you get with bringing on staff. But it's also that there is no silver bullet to growth. It's get to the basics, stick to the basics. Yes, the business grows based on talking to people, pressing the flesh, meeting new people. Every business gets to a stage where it plateaus and you've got to look after your existing clients and you lose focus of bringing on new clients. But then how do you make sure to grow properly? You spend the time re-engaging with your clients. They come back again. They refer you new clients on as well. So I think that's probably my couple of big takeaways there. So look, thanks so much for listening, everybody. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, please email us at brokerbulletin@lmg.broker or DM us on Instagram at lmg.broker, and our producer will make sure we answer it as soon as possible for you. If you like this episode, please make sure you rate and follow us in your favourite pot store. Thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Broker Bulletin. We would hate for you to miss an episode. Subscribe to Broker Bulletin in your favourite podcast app. Has this episode been helpful? We'd love you to rate and review us. It'll help us deliver content that's useful to you and help others discover us. If you have great ideas for topics worth tackling or have burning questions you'd like addressed on an upcoming episode, reach out. Links in the show notes. See you next time.